Introducing the Open Palm Podcast with host Jerome Shaw, available today on your favorite podcast platforms. The Open Palm Podcast is a positive, uplifting, motivational, and inspirational podcast. The host brings his insight and philosophy, and you can't help but gravitate towards his smile, his words, and his wisdom. Again, the podcast he hosts is titled The Open Palm Podcast. It's about inspirational messages, motivating themes, and thought-provoking ideas and topics. He'll also help you become more aware and in harmony with your own life, giving you a better understanding of your place in the world and using your skills accordingly, greeting the world with an open palm instead of a closed fist. You can find the show today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You can also connect with the host on Instagram at Jerome Shaw. That's JROMESHAW on Instagram. Jerome Shaw with the Open Palm Podcast. Motivation, meditation, mentality. Go listen, download, and subscribe today.
A dramatic ballad singer studied under a strict teacher who insisted that he rehearse day after day, month after month, the same passage from the same song without being permitted to go any further. Finally, overwhelmed with frustration and despair, the young man ran off to find another profession. One night, stopping at an inn, he stumbled upon a recitation contest. Having nothing to lose, he entered the competition and, of course, sang the one passage that he knew so well. When he had finished, the sponsor of the contest highly praised his performance. Despite the students' embarrassed objections, the sponsor refused to believe that he had just heard a beginner perform. "Tell me," the sponsor said, "who is your instructor? He must be a great master." The student later became known as a great performer. What does this story tell you, my friend? This story of practice, repetition, consistency, again and again and again. This podcast has been a practice for me. Oddly enough, as many people have come to me saying that it's been therapeutic for them, it's honestly therapy for me as well. Doing something over and over and over. Repetition, as we know, is the mother of skill, the mother of all learning. Consistency is the DNA of mastery. There is value in doing something again and again and again, over and over, finding magic in the mundane. After all, what does an audience know? They may see your glory, but they may never know your story. In my Tai Chi classes, there are people who practice Tai Chi and look as though they are so elegantly doing the movements with such grace, such profound perfection, such experience, such knowledge. The way that they perform the movements, it's a sight to behold. But would you ever know how often they practice at home? How often they stand in front of the mirror or by themselves alone when no one is watching, doing the movements over and over and over. Practicing something so much until it becomes a part of you to really master something. Sometimes we fall in love with it, doing it again and again. We reach a tipping point that many give up before they ever reach. We find solace in solitude. doing things over and over repetitiously can be our own meditation. We can find elation, even relaxation, in doing something over and over again. Who has to know how long we've practiced? I've once heard, when learning a new skill, when mastering something, don't practice till you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. I invite you, my friend, you who are listening to this episode, to go back to episode 1 of this podcast. It's called Harmony and Discord. Listen to that episode and contrast it with this episode. You'll see what I'm talking about. In the very first episode of this podcast, I was reading from a script. I was reading from a piece of paper. But now, I'm able to freestyle. I'm able to just have an idea and let it flow. It is not really me who's doing this talking, but is that inspiration, being inspired or being in spirit. It is what I'm allowing to channel through that reaches you. I really do appreciate you for listening. It means so much to me knowing that there's somebody on the other side of this podcast who gains any value from these stories. And I just wanted to take a moment to tell you that I thank you. It is because of you that I'm still doing this today. It is because of listeners like you that it gives me great joy to continue doing this. There's one who said, "Only those who attempt the absurd achieve the impossible. Just like only one who is willing to risk going too far may find out how far one can go." Would you be willing to do something, one thing, day in and day out, for years? Reaching your 10,000 hours, as it were, becoming an expert in one thing? Or does even the concept of this scare you? Does it bore you? The only difference between a master and a beginner is that a master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. Find out if there's one thing in your life that you wouldn't mind doing for the next 30 years. Let's reduce that. Just the next 10. Find one thing that you wouldn't mind doing for the next 10 years. And I challenge you to do that one thing. Your future self may thank you, not only for doing something that you love, but reaping the benefits and the rewards. For you may never know the fruits of your labor. Labor that after we push past that tipping point isn't labor at all. For just as this podcast is not work for me, this is enjoyment. This is splendor. This is wonder. This is therapy. I could keep doing this podcast for years to come. Find that one thing in your life, and you found happiness. To others, it may seem that you are doing something marvelous, spectacular, but to you, it's the most normal thing ever. Nothing really special at all, because you'd be doing it regardless. You'd be doing it even if no one told you to. Thank you for listening, my friend. This has been Jerome Shaw on TOP, the Open Palm Podcast here in San Antonio, Texas. I prayed that you received an encouraging message, letting you know that practice, or perfect practice, can make perfect. Doing something again and again can really reap dividends later on. You can find so many benefits from doing something over and over. Not only do you become good at it, not only do others see the growth, but you can reap rewards that you never even imagined. Starting something can be daunting. For a blank page or a blank slate can feel like, oh, what do I do with this? Will I ever get good at this? Will I ever reach that point where it feels easy? The thing is, it never really gets easier. But through time, practice, consistency, you get better. Share this episode with a like-minded individual, learning and growing, becoming their greatest version, being all they can be, just like you. Pay it forward so more can hear the message. And if this is your very first time receiving this podcast, subscribe for more inspirational messages like this. And if you feel compelled to support, consider opening your browser to anchor.fm/jshaw. Clicking that support link there is much appreciated. Big shout out and thank you to all the wonderful supporters who continue to donate to the podcast, making it possible for episodes like this. Have a wonderful and blessed day or night wherever you are. And as always, take care. Hey there, my friend. So you've heard about Anchor. But do you know why it's the easiest way to make a podcast? Well, first off, it's free. It allows you to use creation tools that let you record your podcast right from your phone or computer. It also distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can even make money from your podcast with minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Can't wait to hear yours. Let's see what you have to offer the world.